Thank you for... Should I put this? Where is it? Okay. Thank you for inviting me to share our story. My name is Maria. I'll be reading because this is not my mother tongue, so... my name is Maria Jose Contreras. I'm from Chile. This is a picture of my family, my husband Pablo, and my two sons, Franco, 5 years old, and Julian, 3 years old. This is a dear picture to me because it was taken just the day before our entire lives and world changed forever. This was just the previous day from the day we received the diagnosis for Franco of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. 1 month later, we learned that Julian was also affected by DMD. Today, I'll be sharing our journey with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but particularly focusing on our experience as a family participating in a gene therapy clinical trial. Franco is now enrolled and participating in the microdystrophin gene therapy clinical trial. Weeks and months of compulsive nighttime internet research led us to know about gene therapy. We tried to educate ourselves from Chile, reading papers, looking for webinars in the patient advocacy websites as PPMD, and speaking to whomever could enlighten our knowledge and our understanding of gene therapy. Still today, it seems to us somehow like a science fiction. How can we ever deliver a transgene in the bodies of patients? So we started a crusade to contact the 3 gene therapy clinical trials available for Duchenne muscular dystrophy from Chile. One of the principal investigators reached back to us after many calls and many emails. He was very gentle and also very clear. The sponsor of the trial would not accept international patients. Having 2 kids with a fatal disease is heartbreaking, but learning that they can't access the only potential available experimental intervention because they were born in the wrong place feels so unfair. I'm still surprised by the plethora of decisions we took during these first months. As parents, you're not prepared to speculate with probabilities when it comes to your children's lives. One of the most difficult decisions we had to make was to move to the United States to have the opportunity to be screened for a gene therapy clinical trial. Considering that DMD is a fatal disease with no available treatments, we were willing to accept the risk inherent to an experimental intervention. We also understood the need of a placebo, even if the 1-to-1 randomization seems to us a very high percentage of placebo arms. And also because it's difficult to think, because if our son Franco, he got his first infusion at the beginning of this year, if he got the placebo, what keeps us at night, every night now, is the menace, the dreadful menace that during this year, if he got the placebo, he might develop immunity and then would not be eligible for the next phase, eventually receiving the gene therapy. What we just weren't willing to assume was the idea of our son to be randomized in a low-dose cohort that could eventually result in non-therapeutic benefit. So we chose to prioritize the clinical trial that did not have a protocol with an escalating dose. By the end of 2018, we finally received the phone call we were waiting for. Franco was invited to participate in the screening process for a gene therapy clinical trial here in the US. We are privileged enough to be able to move to the United States, to get visas and jobs that allow us to be here. We are so grateful and at the same time very aware of all the families around the world, but also within the US, that just can't afford the direct and indirect costs of participating in a gene therapy clinical trial. We are also aware of all the children that are not eligible because of their age, as Pat mentioned. And also the population of girls, that it's very minoritary in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but that still there are some girls that are affected by the disease, and they, of course, are not considered in any of the clinical trials. As the medical team was aware that Julián was also affected, they suggested to separate the boys for 30 days. If Julián was exposed to the vector, he could develop immunity, and this could prevent him to access the gene therapy in the future. This risk was not mentioned in the consent form at all. Pablo, my husband, in a 24-hour round trip from Ohio to Santiago de Chile, took Julián back to Chile to my mother's house and traveled back to Columbus, Ohio, just in time for Franco's infusion. Some days after the infusion, he went back to Chile and took care of Julián for the next 30 days while I stayed with Franco in Columbus. For our family, one of the most sensitive ethical issues is the lack of a siblings protocol. We are giving Franco an opportunity that at this point we are not sure we'll be able to provide to Julián. In pediatric incurable diseases such as Duchenne, where more than one sibling may be affected, the need of a siblings protocol is urgent. I've been briefly describing our journey for the last 4 minutes. The truth is that these 18 months since we received the diagnosis have been a lifetime. The truth is that these 18 months are a lifetime for our sons and for all the boys and girls affected by progressive fatal genetic diseases. Time passes by too quickly. Time. We need time. We need expedite regulatory processes. We need to make trials accessible for patients in early and advanced phases of the disease, for national and international populations, for boys and girls, and for families that can't afford to participate in a trial. We need innovative protocols that minimize placebo arms and use natural history studies. We also need innovative designs, protocol designs such as master protocols that may combine different therapeutic approaches. I'm sure that as patients and families, we can actively contribute to the design of protocols. So we should really work together. Our voice should be heard not only when we say yes and sign the consent form, but throughout all the process. Thank you.